Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. We got playoffs beginning in both the NBA and NHL, for real this time, because the NHL had that group thing. But we're going to get onto that later in the show. Major League Baseball, they have a giant problem going on right now where they have teams that only played like 8 games. I don't know what the final count is for the Cardinals, but they're like queuing up 7 doubleheaders, which is just ridiculous.
They're
and then
they played 10 games.
Was it 10?
Mm-hmm.
Did they play a doubleheader? I forget when I looked. I might have looked Sunday. But Matt, they already have other teams like double that amount. So you're going to have to queue it up. The thing that really made me mad was you sent me that Fernando Tatis Jr. smacked a grand slam on a 3-0 count. And there were managers on both sides that were criticizing him. And I will say, what a joke. Major League Baseball has all these scheduling problems and everything else going on. And you're going to tell me that managers are complaining because of players out there getting his salary increased? Because that's basically what he's doing. I mean, it's not like any other job that you're going to go ahead and do. Like, let's say if you're just like working for a company and you're a salesman and you make record sales and they have like a big board of all the salesmen and you're like way out in front of the other ones, that'd be like you passing up a sale. Like, you know what? I just can't. I don't want to rub it in everyone else's face. It doesn't matter if like anything else would happen. Like, there's zero repercussions for that. And it just drives me crazy that people are still stuck in the mode where, oh, we have all these unwritten rules. It's like, why? The media keeps them alive because they're a joke at this point. And then you have like old school managers and players, and it's like, is there an unwritten rule about players being called up for like one game and they don't make it? Like, you have players that might not be in major leagues for a very long time. I think players should be more boisterous, like Puig. I like that guy coming up because he was out in everyone's face doing his thing. But Major League Baseball, they hate that. And then they're the ones that are also complaining, no one watches our sport anymore. No one goes to the stadium. It's like, why would they? Like, you're making it like a corporate event. No one likes to go to corporate parties. They're not going to like to go to your Major League Baseball whenever you're running it like a corporation. At some point, that's what it's becoming. And I'll just say that I hate it. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, it was why I sent it to you, because I thought, what a joke. It's, how do you, I don't understand how you get yourself in a spot where, you know, looking at it from the other perspective, what if he takes, if he hit like a little roller and just like was like, we're already up big, I don't care, and just walks back to the dugout, then it's like, oh, well, he didn't even show any hustle. He's not being a team player. He's not trying to, like, he's not respecting the game or whatever. So it's like the opposite could be true too. I think I'd rather, it was 3-0. Why are you grooving a pitch for him to hit a grand slam with? Obviously, he was in a bad spot to begin with because bases were loaded and he got him in a 3-0. So he was just, and at that point it was what, 10-4, 10-0?
I don't know. They had a big lead.
It was a beatdown to begin with, and then they just served up a meatball to him and he put it out of the park. Good for him. I thought you never score enough points, and this is professional baseball. This is your job. If you don't like it, stop him. Don't let him score 14 runs on you.
Matt, I play baseball, and I will say I remember swinging on 3-0 before. And I remember just getting the stare down from my coach because I was waiting for that same exact meatball pitch. And then the next pitch, they walked me anyway. Like, you just swing for the fences. You think, all right, they're going to groove one right down the middle. 3-0. I don't think it was bases loaded. I know at least we had a runner at third because that's what he's like, why would you even swing it that? We had guys in scoring position. What if you did, like, coaches throw out like some outlandish scenario, like, what if you hit into an outrageous double play and then they're able to catch it in shallow left field and flick it to third base and get our guy on third out? And I'm like, dude, what if I hit a home run? You don't know. You don't know unless you swing the bat. And so, like, some of those guys in the majors, you never even come close to seeing pitches like that. So whenever you get a 3-0 with bases loaded and you have a big lead, why not? Because at the end of the year, they don't look at your stats and say, oh, man, like, you missed 40 home runs by 1 home run. And then they're like, oh, well, remember that one game when it was 3-0 and you had one groove right down the plate, you didn't? Like, we'll just add that to your tally. Like, they don't do that. But at the end of the year, they're going to look back and they're going to say, oh, well, he should have had more home runs, or he might have should have did this. Why pass up that opportunity to look out for yourself? Because at some point, baseball isn't a personal sport, like it's an individual sport. Like, you have individual stats. That's why, like, all the blackballing for Barry Bonds, he has the individual stats. Same with, like, Pete Rose. Like, not that many guys get 3,000 hits, and Barry Bonds had, like, the home run record. It's not like they can just erase him. They have all the speculation they keep throwing out, and a lot of it's in the media because they just don't like the guy. At some point, your job as a journalist is not to like the players. It's not like you wake up one day and you're like, you know what, I want to be friends with baseball players. I should go into journalism. Like, that's not the whole point. So, the unwritten rules, I think it goes both ways. I think people always talking about them and, like, acting like it's a cool thing, because it's not. It's almost like, I wonder if it's like some high school bullshit where people think that they had, like, oh, there's like a hidden club in high school. That was so cool. Now that I'm in my 40s, I want to relive that at my job. Because that's the only thing that I can think of where people would be like, oh yeah, I wonder if I should do this or whatever. But I don't know. It annoys me. Baseball has other problems that they need to be focusing on, like, you know, increased viewership, trying to get people to watch. I would watch if I knew guys were going to be swinging. I don't want to watch when guys are throwing, trying to pick guys off on first base 15 times in a row. I don't want to watch whenever there's guys taking forever to get up to the plate, or it's a 3-0, the guy walks a run in. Like, give me a break. That's my thoughts on it. And baseball, like I said, I gave you a chance. Pirates, garbage. Garbage. That they had more wins than the Cardinals at one point, and they were 4.5 games behind. They had, like, I think, I don't want to say a number. I think it was like 2 or 3 more wins. And if you look at how many losses they had, they were like 3-10, and the Cardinals might have been like, I don't even know, 3-3 or something like at that point. They were like,
well, and that's, you know, going back to that Tatis thing, is that you have to keep scoring, because what happens if he doesn't hit it and then they come back and lose that game, and then they end up being in a situation where they're quarantined for a while and they're missing out on games? Every run matters, and especially in a year where if you get a couple of players that test positive and it puts you out for an extended period of time like St. Louis had, you just can't take any of those games for granted, because you don't know how many more you're going to get in.
And that's why I wish whenever the baseball was like, oh, well, we have all these, we're going to do a tie game. At the end of the year, we're going to do a tie game to get in the playoffs. We're going to do a play-in. I think they should get rid of that and just do what soccer does and take the, like, run differential. Like, if you have 90 wins, but every one of your wins was like 1-0 at the end of the year, and then your run differential is like 0 because you're winning and losing by the same amount, you should not be in over a team that's like smacking home runs and scoring runs, because that's who they want in the playoffs. They should want teams that are actually laying the smack down. So, like, they win games like 10-3, but then they lose them 0-1. Like, that's a team you want in the playoffs. You want a team that can get hot, not a team that's like 0-1, 1-0 the entire year. And then I think it's very clear, because baseball, the one thing they don't need is more games. Like, let's be real. I know, like, no one's like looking at this schedule and thinking, oh, wait, it's going to be great. Baseball should just keep adding more games. People are relieved that it's only a 60-game schedule. But the problem is right now is if they don't clean up their act in terms of, like, canceling games or whatever they need to decide to do, which I'm still confused on that, because at some point, if a team has like 10 to 12 outbreaks, like 2 or 3 times, like, their whole team should have had the disease. Like, they shouldn't get any more. So at some point, like, the testing would stop for that team, That's where, like, I'm not sure, like, why you keep quarantining and doing all this stuff for some of these teams, but I mean, that's beyond me. But I did hear that right now they're looking at possibly pushing the playoffs back into November in a bubble scenario, which they've reached out to a couple cities, and guess what? I don't think Pittsburgh's one. Probably mostly cities in the South, I would imagine, just because of the weather. But even then, what are you going to do? Like, they should have just did what I said. You make the modified schedule. You don't worry about, we need 60 games. Like, you worry about playing a regional schedule. And then that way, if shit hits the fan in one region, they get shut down. And like I said, then you just pick the winner out of whatever game. Then you're only worried about making that region play the same amount of games. But because they were like, let's keep the traditional schedule, they kind of screwed themselves. So, I mean, anything else you have on that? That's my thoughts on it. It just annoys me.
No, because across all the sports, I think, like, you're just seeing everything has been in such a delayed start / just up in the air with how they were going to do it. It just there's a lot of speculation, but it's just like, I feel like there's a lot of this. We're looking back in hindsight and going, well, we should have did this or should have did that, and there was all that time to plan for these different variables, and we just kind of kicked the can on it. But I will say, it's better to have some than not at all.
Well, that's where I think they should have just had like a strong leader come up. And a lot of these leagues, they don't have strong leaders, let's be honest. There's not a strong commissioner because that's not what they're getting paid for. You're basically paid to be a lackey for the owners. Like I saw a comment from Adam Silver saying, oh, NBA, we just wish all 30 teams were here in the bubble. Why? You had issues with dudes going out and ordering pizzas and you were suspending them and then like trying to shame them. And then your ratings were down because no one cared about those games. You had teams with losing records. And like, did any bottom feeder make the playoffs? No. I mean, there's no surprise, Matt. It's not like you were like, holy crap, that team actually made it in. No. They were just doing a trial run to try to get, like I said, I think the speculation was, or my speculation is that they just wanted players to get back in the groove of actually shooting and running. And then, I mean, like, you still have injuries. Like, Celtics have Hayward. He got injured again. He's out for 4 weeks, I think, playing the 76ers in the first round. And, like, what are you going to do? You have that injury like that, then possibly, like, what if you did get a positive test or whatever? I know they've been fairly good down there because when you're in the bubble, that's a good move. But like I said all along, if you're going to go to that extreme, why wait? Like, they waited until everything opened and then all of the cases started to spike back up. If they started the bubble earlier when everything was still locked down, guess what? You would have had more success. That's where, like, I'm talking about, like, the leaders and, like, some of the, even the football stuff. Like, the Canadian Football League, they canceled because they were worried about players coming across the border from America to play. They didn't think they were going to have enough roster spots. And supposedly, they're really pushing The Rock to take some of those players. So now he might even have a bigger player pool than what he had before. Because if you remember, like, the AF, they were trying to get, like, Johnny Manziel and a couple other outcasts, like bigger names. You really don't need that if you're going to have guys that are hungry that aren't getting paid now. Like, how are they getting paid? People are, like, worried about NFL guys. What about these minor league type leagues? You think they're going to get paid if they cancel the entire year?
Nope.
Like, they already said there's zero way. They asked for the additional funds. I think they said from the government. I didn't even know the Canadian government sponsored them. But they were, like, declined or something. And so they had to shut down. Because if they said that they wanted those ticket funds or, like, whatever made-up funds, and they didn't get it. And so if you don't have that, how are you going to pay your players? So you know they're not getting paid. If you didn't have money to get the games, to even try to make it up for TV, which maybe they don't make that much up there. I don't know how many viewers they get. But, I mean, the NFL, I'm getting more confident about it every week. I'm just worried about there's been, like, talks of possibly limiting like travels and things like that and schedules, but I just don't see how they're going to do that because you can't bubble in the city. Someone was saying that, they could possibly try to do a bubble by sending the team to the city Friday or something, like they meet the home team on Fridays, do some tests, and then do a rapid response test before the game so that everyone's there and then they're bubbled into the city. But then they would still be traveling. It's not like after the game on Sunday, you're going to just bubble to the next city. Like you're going to go back home or whatever. Being in the bubble means you're not leaving, like what the NBA and NHL are doing. So when I hear football talking like that, I just think, oh man, it's setting up for a disaster. Because like we could talk about fantasy football probably next week. Do you think it's going to happen?
I'm going to say yes.
Because I mean, we always talk about we get our league set up. I've been holding off. I'm the commissioner anyway. So I've been holding off to this point just because I haven't got clear guidelines on like the NFL in terms of roster sizes, people opting out. Like what changes for fantasy are we going to have this year? We usually do, if you listen to the show in the previous years, we usually do a keeper. So now it's like, let's say if I would have set it up, and we would have had our draft like this weekend, which is normally when we have it, this weekend or next weekend, and like your guy opts out that week. You don't know. Like it's going to be a complete crazy year, and then everyone's going to be battling. Like, it's going to be like I try to look for stuff, and maybe other fantasy guys are more excited, but it's almost like a crapshoot this year, where you have no idea. So I wonder what their numbers are going to look like because, like, I just have a feeling that a lot of people are just going to say, you know what, we're just going to skip this year. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I think that as far as like stuff like keepers and things like that, I almost feel like if you're trying to have your year, you're going to try to play. I almost think your keeper you just have to stay with that person that you have, because typically you're keeping people that have high production, and if you're in an auction style league where you're buying players, you probably have them for a good deal. So if you have someone that you are able to pick up relatively cheap, you probably want to, even if they're not playing, it's still worth keeping their rights, and then just knowing going into your draft that you're going to have to fill that need.
Yeah, I'm just worried about, because we usually have, in ours, we have it set up with more injury slots. And I do that because, like, way before I've even started the league years ago, I knew that you have, like, 2 injury slots. And I've been in leagues where they try to limit injuries because they say, oh, then you're more active on the free agents. But you get 2 or 3 guys that are injured, and then you're screwed. Because the way they do the IR and some NFL teams, they don't really keep it. So, like, it's going to hurt you either way. Like, you're either going to get burnt whenever you put, like, oh, I'm going to stash 5 guys, bring in, like, sign 5 new guys, and then the next week they all come off the IR, and you're cutting guys. Like, you're going to get screwed if you try to hoard. So, like, the way they do their waiver wire, it doesn't really benefit you at all. So, I've always been pro bigger roster sizes, but now with the coronavirus, like, I don't know, like, I should probably keep it the same. But then again, with the bigger roster size, who knows? You could be playing like a 7th-string running back, and he's the starter that week. It's going to be a crazy year. So we'll try to look. I'll probably set stuff up, but that'll be on the docket for next week. If you're listening to the podcast, definitely going to talk some fantasy football stuff, because that's going to be a key thing that I don't even think a lot of people are talking about. Everyone just harps about, oh, the coronavirus. Maybe they're going to have a league. Maybe they're not. What about Joe Schmo's fantasy football league? No one's looking out for the little man. No one's looking out for him, Matt. Do you have anything else for the NFL?
No. Just kind of waiting and seeing as far as what's going to happen.
Well, they've been kind of quiet. I think they said that they're going to do the combine virtual, or that's what they're looking at. I know the NBA is doing that. So they're going to be kind of the guinea pig. So luckily, just the way the season's worked out, the NFL can just sit back and they can just go ahead and watch these other leagues, see what they do, and then pick it up from there. Because that's the benefit that they have. And that's why, like, I thought hockey really should have jumped out. You had a chance. People were still in their homes at, like, the end of May, still doing everything. But now, the park, I drive by it, completely filled. Like, I hate even leaving the house at some points just because you never know what's going to go on. But you drive down, boom, completely filled with people. And I was thinking, I guarantee half the people there have never even, like, been walking on trails in the past year prior to, like, the shutdown. So you have all kind of other people out of their house, people that usually probably never did that stuff because there's not a lot to do. And there's, like, no real movies on and stuff. So what live TV are you going to watch? I wonder if TV is even going to rebound. And that includes live sports. Are we going to see the end of it? Is it finally going to come true where they're just going to stream it on social media and you can watch games without paying for these providers because people are just going to get used to going out and doing other things? Because, like, you can't sit at a bar. Like, for the fall, if the bars are still, like, half capacity, how are you going to go enjoy an NFL game? Like, you can go get takeout, and a lot of people, I've seen, like, posts on social media, people doing, like, family picnics and things like that. You go pick up your food, and then they go and just eat it in, like, the parking lot. Or, like, drive-ins where they, like, go park somewhere and eat, like, a tailgate. Do, like, your own mini tailgate. But then again, how are you going to watch the game? It's not like you're lugging around a satellite dish. So this might encourage them to say, you know what, let's put it on their phones and let them watch. I think Verizon has that thing where if you have their mobile or whatever, you can watch games on the NFL app. I don't know if that's still a thing. They had, like, an exclusive contract before. I'll have to check it out and see. But that's my last thing on the NFL. They're quiet for a good reason. I think they're going to be fine. Speaking of quiet, the college football commissioners, Matt, not saying anything. And I've seen some conflicting reports come out this week. And I talked to a source of mine. And I think what a lot of the people in the media and on other podcasts talking about, they don't understand how it works. Like, you get the chancellor or the president from some of these universities, they're the one canceling football. It's not like a bunch of athletic directors. And I'll point out because the one director that went on a warpath was the lady from Penn State. I don't know off the top of her head my name. And be honest, I don't really know any athletic directors' names. Because why would I? Their job is to, like, make schedules and things like that. So she came out and said, well, I don't know if there was an official vote. I never heard anything playing, like, coy. It's like, if the president or the chancellor, depending on how your university is set up, if they went in and they decided, like, yo, we're not going to be worrying about travel and logistics. We got to worry about getting our research done on campus. Of course, they're not going to call up the AD and say, like, yo, we got to do this. But I guarantee they at least had a conversation. Otherwise, why is she the AD? What is she doing? Who is she talking to? Like, they have to have board meetings where they went through that cycle. So I feel like the leaks about, like, oh, this team was going to do this team was going to do that. I just don't believe that. Like, I don't believe a college just called up a conference. Like, it's not like you have all the ADs that work in the same room. It's like the conference center where you can just call them up. Like, that's not how it works. You have them, like, they probably leaked it to the press to see if there was any interest both ways. It's almost like whenever a college or university, they leave their conference, it's not like they call up the other conference. It's not how it happens. They make some comments in the press, and then the other conference usually, like, laughs at them. Like, when the Missouri tried to join the Big Ten, they made a comment like, you know what? We're thinking of joining the Big Ten. And the Big Ten was like, we would never want you. And then they thought, oh, well, does any conference want us? And the SEC was like, we'll talk to you. And that's exactly how that went. They made it clear that the Big Ten was their choice, and they went from there. But, like, you'd be crazy to think that Ohio State's just calling up the ACC or the SEC and saying, you know what, they're going to make a vote when they're going to cancel football. Can we join you guys for a year? Like, it had nothing to do with the conference. It was the system president. So it's not like the president, like, could you imagine, Matt, if your boss came down to you and was like, hey, we have to cancel Claysburg football, and you said, no way, I'm calling Whitfield right now. Like, that's how ridiculous it is. Like, you're going to go out on your own and you're going to just join a different conference randomly?
if that's what it takes.
Now, I mean, I don't know what you've been hearing, but in terms of other things for the colleges, they got to worry about the logistics. The main thing, like UNC, Chapel Hill down here in North Carolina, they just went all remote. I don't know if people know, Michigan State just went all remote. So that's the big issue, number one. You're telling students that, hey, it's not safe to come to campus because we're going to get clusters, but we're going to definitely play football. Mac Brown said it might be safer now. That was his comment, because the other students aren't there to get his players sick.
Well, you're right. You said it, and that was exactly what I was thinking. Is you get the average student who has no interest in keeping the average student doesn't have the same concerns that some of these college athletes have, where they're looking to make a professional career, that if they're off campus and they're away from the party scene, that they're going to be more likely to maintain their safety.
And that's where the decision really gets murky, because it's not like, and I brought up research at first because that's a key aspect. Like, teams and universities, they don't just leave the Big Ten because it has the most powerful research body associated with it. Like, you don't just join the Big Ten. That's why everyone begs to get in, because you get the television contract money, which is number one of all the conferences, and then you're going to get that research money. So, like, it would be a huge blow to, like, the University of Ohio State, like their system. I don't know what it's called. But, like, it would be crazy for them just to walk away from that. Same with, like, Penn State. Because you're throwing it out there saying, like, hey, we don't want to be associated with you guys anymore, but can we stay in that research group? Like, that's cool, right? We keep getting those grant monies. Like, you're just throwing it out there like you're almost going to get cut off. There's precedent from, like, the University of Chicago. They were in the Big Ten. They're still part of their academic. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I haven't looked into it for a long time. But that's a big behind-the-scenes thing. And there are some universities from other conferences that are in it. Like, I think Chapel Hill, UNC, like, they're in it, Virginia. But, like, some of the other schools, like, they're not. So whenever people talk about, like, oh, this team has a chance to join the Big Ten, like, there's other things that they look at. Nebraska was in it. They joined the conference, and then they got kicked out, which was kind of crazy. So, like, that might be one of the ones. That's the only school that I think, just because of that other affiliation getting cut, that they would leave. Now, they've been making strides to try to get back in, because it has to do with, like, all your research money, and you have to have certain programs. And I think they got cut because something with their hospital. They didn't have one on campus or something like that. So there's all kind of other money that is in the billions of dollars. Not just like, oh, here's $50 million. And everyone's like, great job for football. Like, that's not the number one thing. So when people are looking and they're saying, like, they're going to jump to another conference and it might be permanent, wrong. You can just take that guy and ignore him, because it's not going to happen. That's the entire reason why, and I know we joke about it and we speculate, and I always hope that maybe just for sports, they'll get away from those conferences and try to do regional schedules. But guess what? They're not going to do it, because it's tied to the research, number one. So you can read about other sources and stuff. They might try to figure something out. I think the smartest play would be to, and like I said, the Big Ten, they didn't leave it, they didn't give dates like the Pac-12 did, that they're going to have to walk back. So they did it smart. The only thing that they did was they stayed quiet. And I don't know why they just didn't come out and say there wasn't an official vote. That's all you have to say. Then you don't have the vote speculation. And then if someone asks to bring it up, you just say there wasn't an official vote.
Well, I thought that looked so bad on the Big Ten's part that they made it out to be like they hung Iowa and Nebraska out, and then you find out later that there were more schools that were voting to try to play, but they released it late, and then you have coaches. It's like everyone's pushing to play, but the bottom line to it all is that there's the issue of liability of if someone gets sick, how far or how many levels of things can people sue, and that's where the majority of these issues are coming into play. Is that where does the liability line end? And I think the schools aren't willing to take that on, so they're erring on the side of just shutting everything down.
And that's why, like I said, for even when they're talking about like football, maybe do like a bubble in like a dome, it just doesn't work. Maybe if the school is all remote, Mac Brown could have a point. But again, you're still worried about travel logistics. I mean, you have all this other stuff that you have to worry about. Who are they going to come in contact with? Are they just going to not go through the actual airport? Like, it's not like you can just put a bubble on and walk through. I mean, I guess you could, maybe. But then you're just like throwing all these other scenarios out there when, if you're looking at it in terms of actually making it work, there's a lot to go into it. If you're saying, like you said, to get the liability out of it. That's where, like, if all of the conferences would try to come together with the NCAA and say, like, look, this is how we're doing it. But the NCAA, they've been successfully sued in the past. So they're not going to step up. They're kind of letting the schools handle it for football, and then they're going to make a decision on basketball. Because it would be crazy. That's why I thought it was a shock that the basketball tournament was canceled in real time. But looking back at it, it was almost like the schools and the conferences weren't guaranteeing it. So normally the lawsuit goes after the biggest entity. So those players, if something would have happened, they would have sued the NCAA in like a class action lawsuit, and they would have been done. Like even Coach K at Duke said that if the NCAA doesn't get this basketball tournament figured out for next year, like they're done. I also saw them. There was a I forget the guy from ESPN. He interviewed Coach Calipari, and Coach Calipari explained it that they should just have like bubble tournaments, basically set up as bye weeks. Like you play bye teams, BYE, like easy teams. And he listed like Detroit, like East Tennessee State and things like that. And the guy from ESPN thought that they meant bye weeks, like BUY, like he was going to buy those teams out just to come play it on this bubble. And like that was like their only season game. It's like, that's not what he's saying. He's saying basically like practice that counts. So that everyone goes to the bubble and you play easy teams in this bubble just to see how it works. But you get a big name, one marquee team that might get it on television to try to get extra money back in, and you split it with them. Which I thought might be a good deal if nothing else is on. But then if football and the NFL's on, people aren't going to watch you beat up on nobodies. So then you have the same scenario. It's not like these bigger universities are just going to start paying to fund other smaller schools. Like that would just be nuts. Why? Do we need like 200, 300 teams in the NCAA tournament possible because of all the conferences? No. A Cinderella is still going to be a Cinderella. No one cares if it's coming from Acorn Conference, wherever in the middle of the United States. Like, it doesn't matter. So that's my thoughts on that. I just think that if college football is going to happen, first off, they need to quit pushing the dates back. And like, how many times are they going to announce like their schedules? Like the SEC finally figured out their first week and what they're going to do. And you just need to go with it. Like, stick with it and have a say. If that happens, like, there's no reason why like the Big Ten couldn't jump in in November. And like I said, why do you have to play 10 games? That's my other beef with the rumors that the Big Ten and Pac-12 teams are looking to join another conference for this year. What are they going to do for scheduling? Like, they're trying to like figure out a 10-team schedule that they've already taken weeks to figure out. You're just going to randomly throw an Ohio State in there? Who's going to want to play them? Like, if you're like Clemson in the ACC, you're going to be like, nah, dog, we're going to pass on that. Our schedule looks pretty easy right now. We're not going to just throw in a trip to Columbus, like randomly, because they want to play football. So it's going to be like a weird independent schedule. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a couple of the Big Ten teams, if they want to opt out for a year. No big deal. But again, it comes down to the actual university, and ESPN's been harping on it all summer long, that how can you play sports if you don't have kids on campus? And campuses are already closing. So at that point, I think it's just a matter of time. Because if the lawsuits start flying with like, we need refunds because of this and that, and then you bring back college sports and someone would get hurt, because let's be honest, it's not going to really be a kid probably. I mean, there might be. But what about like their parent? Like you said last week, you're not going to be able to keep the parents away. Because these are kids. So some of them are like under 18. Like, we see stories all the time about kids enrolling early. There's like 16, or they're not 16, they're probably 17-year-old kids out there. You just want them to like quarantine away from their parents for months at a time so they can go play football? Not going to happen. So, we'll see. I'm not skeptical on it, because I think if the NFL goes and all these other sports leagues are going, the big thing is going to be high school sports, which I don't know if you got any other intel on PIAA. I think a couple states around, I think North Carolina we talked about last week, they went to spring for football. The state of Michigan went to spring for football. Some schools in Texas started to opt out. I don't know how they're going to do it, if they have to postpone for the year or what they're going to do. But I think that's going to be a starting point for colleges. If all the high schools and stuff push back, not a big deal. I brought up Pitt last week, but if high school sports in Pennsylvania play, then Pitt has a very good case to say, like, look, we're going to play in the ACC this year. And so that's the other stepping stone. They need a precedent. If everything else cancels, Penn State football and high school football and whatever, I mean, maybe the Steelers playing in the same city could get them a little bit of clout, but I just honestly don't see Penn State not playing and Pitt playing. It doesn't make sense. Now, if high school's playing, then and Penn State's the only football team not playing, then go for it. That's my take. Because people have been coming at me saying like, oh, Pitt's going to play, blah, blah. It's very simple. They need to be able to have other football teams playing for that liability type thing. Saying like, look, Steelers are playing in Pittsburgh, they're fine. High school's playing, they're fine. Why would only Pitt and Penn State cancel? Like, I don't think Temple canceled or anything like that. So I don't know whether big football schools are in the state. I think Villanova's D2, aren't they? You have things like that. So
yeah,
I don't know. Well, what are you hearing, Coach?
Well, one of the big things was Ohio just released that they're going to allow fall football to happen. So that was a pretty big step, that their governor was okay with opening it up, which should put hopefully a little bit of pressure on Governor Wolf. As a conference, the coaches that I coach with, we put together a letter that we submitted to the governor. We actually got word that it's being sent to him directly, and it'll be on his desk for him to read tomorrow. So that was kind of good news from our conference. We felt like it was important to get our voice heard by him, because a lot of times in this area what ends up happening is our area, that's a pretty centralized, isolated area, gets lumped into maybe the common problems that Pittsburgh and Philadelphia do. And even if they leave it to the local schools, I feel confident that we could have our own season even if it was just within the conference, we could play our conference schedule and be able to successfully play it without having a lot of of issues with the virus. I think when you look at some of the schools, like Philadelphia schools shut down, and they're one of the places that had a lot of cases and issues with containing the spread. It makes sense to do that. And if they're starting the year off virtually, it makes sense for them to do that. But why penalize an entire state because of one controlled area? I think for the areas like ours that we were doing the things we needed to do, and to be honest, with our 7-on-7s, there's 2 teams within my conference that we were doing 7-on-7s with, and with doing the temperature checks and things, there wasn't any, there weren't any issues with players contracting the virus. So I feel like we should be okay. Now the big hurdle to overcome is going to be what PIAA decides to do on Friday, because they're going to release their final decision on whether we go forward or if they want to delay it further. My gut tells me if I can see them saying proceed but leave it at a local school level, and then my worry is that when they allow us to try to play, that then the governor will step in on Monday and just completely shut everything down.
That's what I'm worried about. Because if they don't put out a strong statement, like I said, I think what's been missing a lot across the country is just strong leadership statements of we're going to do this. Instead, it's more like, well, we don't really know, blah, blah, blah. Like, we're not really sure. We're going to try to bubble. And then like a fan, like, you're not going to tune in if you don't know what's going to happen. Like, if the Big Ten doesn't play and you're going to throw me a Vanderbilt Tennessee game randomly, am I going to tune in for that? Possibly not. If you're going to throw me Alabama LSU, okay, I'm interested. I'm not going to be interested in these Joe Schmo games just because, like, they're the only thing on. Like, that's, I think, that what the basketball problem is. They thought that, we're going to get into a bubble, we're going to be on ABC, but they didn't think it through. They're giving you meaningless games. They're giving you, like, teams that weren't going to make the playoffs playing each other on, like, a Thursday night. Not a good mix. They need to go ahead and try to throw out whatever they need to bring in viewers, and the less teams that play, the less chance there is for that to happen. So I think whenever you get back to it, it needs to come from a point where normally you have college schedules that have the best of each conference. So like the SEC might not have a good matchup one week, but let's say the Big Ten or the Big 12, they do. That's the primetime game. Like, it rotates. And so with a lot of conferences dropping out, how many games are you really going to go ahead and see? So that's where I'm at with it. The TV stuff, I just don't know going forward what we're going to really see this fall, even if they do happen. Because if it gets to the point where they start to play and they delay games, like if the NFL cancels, you can't just do doubleheaders in the NFL. So like in college, if they canceled a game, you're going to have one cancellation leads to unbalanced schedules, and then you're done. I know they put a flex week in, but normally, like you can see right now with Major League Baseball, one team quarantining for multiple weeks hurts them while the rest of the league plays on, and now they're in catch-up mode. Like, let's say like LSU. Let's say they get out and they miss like 2 or 3 games, and then they miss so many or they're like 2 or 3 games behind, and they miss so many you just can't make them up at some point. Do you finish like just with like a 7-game schedule? So they finish maybe like 6-1, and then you're looking at the conference championship game going, okay, do I put them in?
But I think that's where you reward the teams that were able to play a full schedule, and that's the way that you decide it. Because
how can you say that? Like, let's say if you're in the West, you have like a 10-2 Alabama, or like a 6-1, or I guess it wouldn't be. It'd be like 8-2 or a 6-1 LSU. Like, what do? You put Bam in?
You go with the team that played more games. If you establish,
you go by winning percentage
ahead of time. No, I'm saying go by if it's close, like if you're in a situation like that, then the default goes to the teams that played more games.
I have a better scenario. I think they put a ball at the 50-yard line, and each coach has to run, and whoever comes up with it. I heard that's what The Rock was doing.
Oh yeah, bringing that one back.
I know, people that don't know, that's the old XFL kickoff from the first time. The guy like separated his shoulder, like the very first one, I think.
Literally, like got injured for the season.
Yeah, that's why the coaches do it. Could you see it, Ed, out there going after Saban?
Funny that you say that, because I thought, well, then LSU's winning every game if Ogeron's out there running.
So I think that's pretty much. Let's see what else I had on our agenda today. The unwritten rules thing annoyed me. The NHL and the NBA playoffs. We had to think about the silent votes, which is like kind of like the Big Ten thing. You can't have like silent votes and then just ignore it. And that's where I think a lot of teams, like the commissioner needs to step up and say, like, that's not even how the conference works, but who knows what's happening. I don't know. Not a lot of stuff going on. Like I said, Celtics, Hayward's out again. He's injured. At some point, when a guy gets injured that much, you just got to think, why are we investing in him? I mean, I hate to do it, but there are guys that just get injured. Facts. And then there are guys like the Iron Man guys, like Cal Ripken, guys that didn't get injured. Invest in those guys. That's my front office advice. Speaking of injuries, Alex Smith's back. Which, Matt, I tried to see a picture of his leg because I was curious. I thought, oh, after all these surgeries, what does his leg look like now? I don't know if it's his real leg, but the picture they put out there is like a half crooked leg. And I was like, that can't be his leg right now. Like you would think after all those surgeries.
Well, I watched it when they said he was released to come out, and like he came outside. I thought he was going to re-injure himself when his son came, like barreling after him, and he couldn't sidestep his son blitzing him.
Well, like I said, I was trying to see because I wondered if like your legs just hold together. Like how normal does it look? I could see like some scarring and stuff, but I don't know. That's scary stuff. Coming back from that, like a freak injury, but who knows? You might be back and you might be fine. I think, was it Paul George that had a freak injury like that? I don't think he's been injured since. Yeah. That was like with the Dream Team version 12 or whatever. I think that was with the Olympics he was training. Just landed the wrong way, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think the big stuff going forward, NHL playoffs, Penguins were already eliminated. The bubble's going strong. Carolina, I thought they had a hot run. They're down. I think they play tomorrow. I was hoping that they would make a run, give me a team with rooting interest. But like I said, at this point, I'll be honest, hockey waited so long. It's the heat. It's so hot here that I know, like, hopefully not this week won't be as loud, but last week, sorry about the audio it sounded like I was in a wind turbine. I had to have my AC on. I'm so hot, I'm not going to sit there and think, you know what I should be watching right now? Hockey. It's like, no, not interested. Same with like NBA. Why would I want to watch a bunch of guys run around indoors? Show me some outdoor stuff. I'm in the mix for some football right now. It's football time. And I'm not getting it. This preseason should at least be on. And so I'm not getting that. And it's almost like, do you care anymore? I had one other random tidbit since we talked about video games sometimes with like EA Sports and Madden. There's rumors that they're going to combine. Well, I guess they already announced that they're going to combine it. But the EA thing that we talked about on the show like a year ago, EA Origins or whatever, where you pay $30 and then you can get all the old Maddens for people that don't care about like the training cards. That's supposed to be combined. So like I had that on my Xbox. They're supposed to be combining that with computers too. So like if you have that, instead of being locked in on one system, I wonder if they're going to open it up. They were supposed to announce it today. So like if you got like a new Xbox or a new PlayStation when they come out this Christmas, I'm hoping that your thing carries over and you don't have to worry about getting, oh, do I have to pay for the new Madden 2021 upgrade? because the way that system's set up is you can pick some of the old Maddens and just play the old ones, which are basically the same. And if you go to the community roster list, you can download the updated rosters anyway, as long as they don't screw that over. So I'm not holding my breath because I know that EA will most likely do the most anti-consumer thing by like only adding like the most recent Madden that you have to pay double for. But just putting that out there for people that are missing their football fix. There was also talk about bringing back the XFL game. I think it leaked that it was kind of like someone said that there was a version put out by the people that made the Doug Flutie football game that was supposed to be a pitch to the XFL, that might be their game, but I heard there was other companies involved before. I tried to find old sources, but it's hard to find XFL stuff. A lot of that stuff shut down. So I really can't find news of that. So right now, Madden is your only football game. It's supposed to be out. I don't even know. It might be out already. But that's your chance. And if you're getting like a new Xbox or PlayStation, you're going to be screwed on the Madden upgrade because they said they want you to pay again for the new version. So if you buy it now and you get a new console for Christmas, you're supposed to be having to pay for a new Madden too. Stupid. That's my last off-topic rant. Anything else you have?
I got nothing else.
Yeah, we're trying to bring you football stuff, content for the show, so I appreciate it. We're still getting some downloads. Some weeks are obviously heavier than others, depending on how much news we have. But we appreciate everyone that's listening. Still trying to keep the show going. Trying to do extra stuff, but it's tough right now. Go to southboundsports.com. You can see all of our old episodes. Working on playing it so that you can listen to them right there. So making some adjustments when you land. You can see all the old ones and listen to them there. Or you can subscribe on your favorite podcast apps. We might have an announcement coming for a new podcast host that contacted us about having our show listed there. So there'll be other ways to listen. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.